Yo, 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 Double G here. I'm going to show you how to set up your BIOS for the new Dark and Darker requirements to play High Roller. First thing you're going to do is turn on your PC and spam click the F2 button until you get into your BIOS. Once you're in your BIOS, first thing you're going to do is you're going to see this page here. This is going to be the main page, which is where you're going to get a lot of information about your system. So here is my resting stats, voltage, and temps. What you're going to want to do is first go over to your boot cycle. So this is the first thing you're going to want to do is hit your boot. And once you're in your boot, you're going to want to make sure that CSM, hold on, let me turn my AC off just so it's a little quieter in here. So first thing you're going to do is turn off CSM, because this is basically compatibility support mode for legacy boots. You're not going to need that at all. Make sure that's disabled. The second thing you're going to do is go into your secure boot and make sure that your OS type is set to Windows instead of other OS, and make sure your secure boot is set to standard instead of custom. And once you're there, you're going to go back here and make sure your boot option is set up correctly, which normally should be. And then the next thing I do is go over to advanced, and then you're going to want to go down to this. It might be titled something different on your motherboard depending on what you have. I have an Asus, so we're going to click in here and make sure that PTT is enabled. PTT on Asus motherboards is TPM. So when you need to enable TPM 2.0, what you're doing is you're going over to this PTT, you're making sure that is enabled. And then once that's enabled, the next thing you're going to need to go into CPU configuration, and you're going to want to scroll down. And there's some useful settings here, I can touch on them, but right now I'm trying to just go through what you need for Dark and Darker. And this will be disabled by default because it's dog shit. You don't want virtualization on. Basically, what virtualization is doing is running a separate PC inside of your PC. When it's on by default, it doesn't matter. It won't hurt your FPS or anything like that, but what will hurt your FPS is when you use it. So if you want to emulate something, an emulator, or what Dark and Darker wants you to do is turn on HVCI, which is core isolation, which is going to use virtualization to set up a second PC inside of your PC. Fun stuff, right? Well, you're going to lose about 5 to 10% frames from doing that. So that's fine. So how do we get that back? So I got some suggestions for you here. Well, once you turn this on, you're going to want to restart your PC. Save these changes. I didn't change anything, so we're just going to hit OK. And you're going to let it boot into your Windows. So what's the next setting we need? All right, well, first thing you're going to want to do is make sure TPM 2.0 is on. And you can do that once you boot up here by hitting Windows R. And once you hit Windows R, you're going to want to type in tpm.msc. And it'll show you TPM's on. Or you can just go directly into your settings. Sorry about the tape on my monitor. I got a new monitor. And you're going to want to go into your settings and you go to Windows Updates. Now I have my Windows Updates disabled to automatically go, so you won't be able to update anything, but you're going to go to Windows Security, and then you're going to want to go to Device Security. And if you see core isolation, you're good to go. You click into core isolation and you have to turn this on to play Dark and Darker. I don't have it on right now because I'm not playing Dark and Darker. When I don't play Dark and Darker, I turn this off because you will lose 5% frames and you will get like micro stutters most times with using core isolation. It's terrible software, so it's kind of dog shit that you have to enable it. So if I'm gonna go play Dark and Darker, I'll enable this and you'll have to restart your PC. So once that's clicked, you're good to go. And if you see this secure processing, that means your TPM's active. You can just check it that way as well. See how specification 2.0, that's my TPM. So we're good to go there. All right, everything's set up, and that's all you need to do to play Dark and Darker. But when you turn this on, you're losing 5% frames, right? So what I'm gonna do is show you how to get some of that performance back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna restart my PC here, and I'm going to spam F2. I'm gonna have to put the thing down for a second while I spam this. You record it on my phone because I don't have any recording device. I just wanted to show you guys how to do this if you needed. I apologize for the bad video. I'm sure this is going to be terrible quality. All right, we're going to get back into the BIOS here. All right, so you can click cancel on this. Previous values will be loaded already. So let's go through everything you can do to get back those 5% frames that you're going to be losing. So there's a lot of good settings in here. We'll do extreme tweaker last because that's where you want to touch the least amount of stuff because it's the most advanced. First thing you're going to do is go into monitor, and you're going to go to temperature monitor. Anything that says NA next to it, if it's not showing you a actual number like this, you're going to want to change it from monitor to ignore, so it's less taxing on your system. So I ignored these three earlier, and then you go into fan speed monitor, and you're going to ignore anything that says NA, which was pretty much everything except for my CPU fan. And if it says NA, you just ignore it. You click ignore. And nothing in voltage, don't touch that. Make sure this doesn't matter, it can be enabled. I'll show you the fan configuration too. What you're gonna wanna do is go down here, turn your fan to PWM mode, manual. This will be on automatic. You're gonna set this to manual, and these will both say 0. You're gonna wanna turn these to 25 seconds, and this will say 200 RPM. You're gonna wanna change that to 600 RPM. And then these are the values I use for my fans. So this means when it's at a 70% load, my fan is running at 100%. When it is at a 50% load, my fan is running at 50%. And when it's at a 30% load, my fan is running at 26%. So that's a pretty solid value I found for cooling. And that might vary depending on how much cooling you have available to you on your system. Let's go through some of these advanced options. So when you go to platform configuration, you're gonna wanna turn this off, disable this. This means it puts to sleep any device that is plugged into your USB port. So like my mouse, after 5 minutes, it'll go idle, and then when I move it, it'll have to wake up. This disables any sleeping of any device, so they're always active, which you want that, and then you want all of these disabled as well, including the only one that'll be enabled is express clock gating. You're going to want to disable that as well. That's another device that puts things to sleep on your USB port. So if you disable that, it's going to turn out to be better quality. You're just going to have a better running system. And then when you go down to CPU configuration, this is where we're going to change some more settings. So you're going to want to go down and make sure that you have, if your CPU is good enough to, and it's supported by hyperthreading, you can Google the CPU you have. For example, I have a i9 10900K, and I use hyperthreading. That'll give me 10 more cores than my 10 more cores to use in my CPU, which is good. So I enable that. Everything else here is set to default. And then I go into CPU power management control, and this is where you're going to want to make sure that speed step is disabled and speed shift technology is also disabled. And then you're going to want to enable turbo mode, and you're going to want to disable CPU C states. You want this disabled. This will help you run better. Once we go back here, we'll go back to here, and then we're going to go to the next setting, which is going to be this VTED. You want that enabled for HVC. So if you're having trouble enabling core isolation in your menu, this might be a setting that you have to make sure is also enabled that wasn't. Once that's enabled, you're good. This disabled. Don't touch anything in these three. They're good to go. We're going to go back here. You don't need anything here. You don't need anything here. Leave those default. And then here's where I showed you how to turn TPM on. That's already enabled. And then Thunderbolt configuration. I disable this because I don't use any Thunderbolts, so it frees up space not running a Thunderbolt. If you use Thunderbolt, which would be like charging an Apple MacBook or something, I don't know. If it has a lightning symbol on it, that's a Thunder cable, so you can leave that enabled if you want to, but it just enables a bunch of settings that kind of just run stuff. Oh yeah, also I forgot, trusted computing needs to be on for you to be able to run anything for this dark and darker. So you have to have security device support on to be able to run HVC core isolation. So also TPM 2.0 will not run without security device support on. So once you have security device support on, you're good to go. You don't touch anything else in here. Everything stays default. We do not touch anything in here. And then when we go back, we're going to go into PCI subset settings. And these are good. You just want to leave these default as well. And then we'll go to USP configuration, legacy support enabled, and you want X HCI handoff to be whatever your default setting is, you leave it. My default setting is disabled, so I leave it disabled. If your default setting is enabled, you leave it enabled. What this means basically is that it takes the HCI handoff at the OS level or at the motherboard level. So when it's disabled, the motherboard is able to run your USB devices. And when it's enabled, the motherboard sends the signal to the CPU to the OS level on Windows, which then runs through Windows, which is just extra steps, extra processing power to do. So if you're able to run this at disabled, it'll show by default, which is just a better input latency all around, and it will not have your OS handling any of your USB devices. Rather, your motherboard will handle every USB device, which is what you want. Don't touch anything in here, leave that disabled. And then we're gonna go back here and we're gonna go to network stack, make sure that is disabled. Network stack needs to be disabled, that's dog water. Don't even touch that, no point of touching that. Onboard device. So here, I disable USB audio because without it, I can still run my USB DAC. My DAC runs through a USB port, and my headset runs through the DAC through a USB port, which is able to work without USB audio on. All USB audio does is it enables USB audio at the motherboard level rather than at my DAC level. So because I have a DAC, I don't need this on. If I did not have a DAC or a sound system, I would enable this. So most people should leave this enabled unless you plug in your headphones without a USB device. Then there's no point in using this, and you can go through and disable that. These you don't need to touch because they'll enable and disable automatically depending on what you plug in. This, if you want this enabled or disabled, I use it enabled because when my PC is off and I plug my mouse in, it'll charge while my PC is off. I use an Ethernet port, so I turn off Wi-Fi controller. No point in having that on. I had it disabled before just through the Windows, but if you just disable it altogether, it's probably better off if you're not going to ever use it. Same with Bluetooth controller. I don't use Bluetooth on my computer, so these are just extra processing things that will be running. And then I turn this on stealth mode. That you can put on whatever, that's just color settings. And then I don't touch anything else. These are all default. So once you do that, we'll go back and go in here. This is the last one. Make sure these are all disabled, and this is set to power off, which is all default, should be like that. And that's all you need to do in the advanced setting. So once we do that, we're going to go over to extreme tweaker. Now this is where it's going to vary depending on the CPU that you use. So for example, with my i9 10th gen 10900K, I'm able to run it pretty hot. I can run it at about 5,300 microhertz, but I run it at 5,000 just for better stability. You're going to want to use XMP1 versus XMP2. The difference is XMP1 pretty much configures the RAM to what it says it's going to do on the box. XMP1 uses the motherboard's configuration. XMP2 uses the RAM's configuration. So if you use XMP2, it's going to be a little bit more of an overclock than if you use XMP1. You'll find more stability with using XMP1, I've figured, through testing. And then with adaptive boost, leave that auto. You'll leave this enabled. You can turn this off if you want to. There's a long story on this setting, but if it's enabled by default, you can use it. It basically uncaps all the settings, which we're going to customize here. So if you're not going to tweak anything else, you can disable this. But if you're going to do my tweaks, you can enable it. So for my tweaks, I have it enabled. Leave this on auto. You can leave this on auto, and then I do sync all cores, and then this is where you type in what you want your CPU to run at. So I have it at 50, which means 5,000. So that's where I'm getting this 5,000 microhertz number. If you are able to run this higher, you can put 53, 52, 51. I've seen a lot of people with my, in particular, CPU, they're able to run this at 52. I run it at 50 just for stability and heat. Then auto, enabled, these are all default. And then this should automatically change based on this setting up here. So if you don't have to set this, it'll automatically set when you turn XMP on, which everybody should have XMP on. That is the best setting for your RAM overclock. And this will automatically turn to that. And then just extreme tweaking, I leave that disabled. And then this is going to say auto for you. You want to disable this because this setting mixed with multi-core enhancement up here, multi-core enhancement pretty much will it'll see you have extra power or extra heat to use, and it'll ramp up your volts automatically, which you don't want. We want to control our volts. So by turning off this and this setting down here, we also disable. This will be enabled by default. You're going to disable that. It will not adaptively change your volts based on how much power you're using. We don't want that. We want it to run at the amount of volts we're going to set it. So what you're going to do down here is you can set this to manual mode. It's going to be on auto. You turn it to manual mode. And then I type in 1.31 because that's the amount of volts that I wanted to max out at, never go over that. What you should have is your number between 1.25 and 1.35. Anywhere in between there, you're gonna find that it is stable. This next setting is set automatically by your XMP. So when you pick your XMP profile, this number will set automatically. Do not change that. What yellow means is that it's getting close to an unadvised number. If it turns purple, if yours is purple on the state, that means that it does not advise you to run that number. So if it's not purple, you're good to go. And then this next setting, I don't ask how I got to this number, but everybody in the community says to run this at, for the longest time, for the past 7 years, I said to run these two settings here at 1.1. But in recent years, in the past 2 years with the newer CPUs, they say it's actually 1.12, which is going to give you the best results. So, and that's through thorough testing through a lot of people. So you're going to type in 1.12 here, and then you're going to change this from auto to manual mode, and you're going to type in 1.12. So once you do that, that's all the settings we're going to touch here. And then you go up here and we're going to see Digi plus VRAM. We're going to go in here and you're going to want to change this CPU load calibration from auto to level 4. Level 4 is the best. And then don't change anything else. Everything else will be default except for this. This will be on auto. You're going to want to change your CPU capacity to your max, and then you're going to want to scroll down to see your DRAM, and your DRAM will be set to 100%. You're going to want to turn this to 130, so you're getting maximum amount of DRAM, and then that's it. That's all we change in here. Everything else is default. And then we go to internal CPU power management, and we scroll down to these numbers. These numbers are all going to say auto. What you're going to want to do is click here and type in 999999 and hit enter, and it will give it your max number. And then you do the same for here, 999999, and it'll give you your max amount of watts you can run. And then here you want to put in 99999, and it'll give you the maximum watts you want to run. And here you can leave this on auto. Some people turn this to 127 or 128, whatever number you're capable of for your CPU. I've just been running this at auto. I've tested different numbers here, and it seems like 56 seconds gives me the most stability, which is probably the best. So I leave that, and then what we do is go back here, and we're going to go to Tweaker's Paradise, and you're going to want to turn off real-time memory timing. Real-time memory timing from enabled to disabled. And then we're going to go back here, and we're going to go into AI features, and you're going to change nothing. And that is the overclock. So let's test it. Let me show you my testing. So once you have all that, you're going to save changes or reset. I didn't make any changes, so I'm not going to, you're not going to see anything. If you made changes, it'll show you every single change there on the screen, and you can verify that it's the proper changes that you made. So now let me test this for you. You guys like my images? All I am. So once we get in here, I'm going to run a software that you can download too, and it'll give you a 30-day free trial. But if you don't want to even test it, which is fine, you can just run my settings. As long as you have a 10th gen CPU or higher, you should be fine. I'm going to let my system load up a little bit. I have Process Lasso running, so I'm going to wait for another software to pop up here before I start my test. Just waiting for it. Which is my ICS cleaner. If I don't load it, then my PC, then I know my PC, then there we go. All right, so that's loaded. All right, we're good. You guys don't have to worry about that if you don't have ISS cleaner and Process Lasso. So I'm going to launch this software, which is called AIDA 64 Extreme. You can get your free trial here. And what you're gonna want to do is click on this fire, which is your test. And then you're going to go down into preferences, and make sure it looks like this. It's not going to look like this at first, but you're going to go and select every single core straight down on the list, the amount of cores you have for your CPU. So I have 10, so I selected all 10, and then you hit OK. I'm just going to cancel because I don't want to change anything. And then you click on this, and it's going to bring up your stats. So here's my stats running without the test, and you see my CPU core clock is set to 5,000 exactly, and my voltage is hovering around 1.31, kind of like what we set. And then if you look down here, your memory clock, that's my maximum clock, and then my 48 to 3, and my amount of cache. So what we're gonna check here while we do the test is my temperatures. My sitting temperatures are around 34, 33 degrees, and we're gonna wanna make sure this does not go over 90 or 85. So when we start the test, everything's gonna start jumping. And we also wanna make sure that our clock speed does not change when we're running the test. If this is lowering, if your clock speed is dropping, then you know you have an unstable system. My voltage is going to vary, but normally it's gonna run under 1.3, which is what I set it at. So as we see here, everything's going right there. That looks proper. And my voltage has not dropped a single inch. I'm just holding the clock, which is perfect. That's exactly what you wanna see. And then let's check the temperatures. They're all under 80 for now, which is good. And they're gonna fluctuate. And normally you wanna run this test for about 15 minutes. I've seen people run it for 3 hours as well, just to see what your highest temp is and make sure that you don't drop clockage at all or anything. This is good temp for me. So before I did these settings, before I had to enable any of this shit for dark and darker, my temperatures were actually hitting 90. So I've dropped my system temps down by about 12 degrees and upped my voltage by about 0.3 voltage. So I'm running more voltage on my CPU, and I'm able to maintain the same clock, but with way lower temperatures. Phenomenal, way lower temperatures. So if you want to get your performance back from doing these dark and darker settings, this is a really quick guide to how you can do this and manage your system at a better state. And these numbers are just phenomenal. And then when I end the test here, you can go into your statistics, and I didn't run it very long, but you can see my highest temperature I hit at all was 82, which is really good. Before this, the highest temp I was hitting was like 95, which is why my room was getting blasted. And as you see, the voltage did not really go over 1.305, and we have it set to 1.31, so that's exactly what you want to see. Yeah, so this is obviously a test without core isolation turned on, because core isolation is dog shit. So if I'm not playing dark and darker, I'm not running core isolation. But when I go to get on dark and darker to play high roller, if I'm playing high roller, I'll turn this on and go play, and then I'll turn it off when I end the game. But let me know if you have any questions. Sorry about the really shaky video. I don't have a camera, but I wanted to show you guys what I did.